13 Stoic sentences that define your day before 7 a.m., or you lose control. You wake up every morning already defeated, and you call it routine. Before your feet touch the floor, your mind has surrendered. Notifications decide your mood. Other people decide your tempo. Circumstances decide your spine, and you mistake this passive collapse for normal life. Here is the truth you avoid. Your day is not shaped at noon. It is not shaped by meetings, money, or conflict. It is decided in the narrow window when your consciousness is weakest and your habits are loudest. That window closes before 7. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. If your life feels reactive, scattered, and fragile, why do you think tomorrow will be different if you wake up the same way? Most men never choose their inner posture. They inherit it from noise. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. Viktor Frankl proved that even in absolute deprivation, the final human freedom remains intact. Not the freedom to escape conditions, but the freedom to decide who you will be inside them. You lost that freedom gradually, not dramatically, through comfort, through distraction, through the lie that discipline can wait. What you call a bad day is usually a bad beginning that snowballed. What you call anxiety is often untrained attention. What you call lack of motivation is a refusal to command yourself. Stoicism was never about calm, it was about command. Modern psychology confirms what ancient philosophy already understood. The brain is most programmable immediately after waking. Neural pathways are unstable. Identity is malleable. Attention is unguarded. This is not inspiration. This is vulnerability. If you do not fill that space deliberately, something else will. Fear, comparison, resentment, urgency without meaning. Nietzsche called this the herd instinct. Jung called it unconscious possession. Fromm called it escape from freedom. Different language, same diagnosis. You are not overwhelmed because life is hard. You are overwhelmed because you refuse to set your inner order before the world attacks it. These 13 Stoic sentences are not affirmations. They are constraints. They are not meant to comfort you. They are meant to position you. Each one targets a specific illusion that weakens men before the day even begins. Illusions about control, about worth, about effort, about suffering, about time. Ignore them, and your day will own you. Apply them, and the day becomes material. This is not self-help. This is mental sovereignty. Before 7, you decide whether you will be governed or governing, whether pain will train you or consume you, whether chaos will tax you later or discipline will cost you now. Listen carefully. The difference between a composed life and a reactive one is not intelligence. It is what you tell yourself when no one is watching. If this unsettles you, good. Discomfort is the signal that truth has touched a nerve. You want clarity, but you negotiate with responsibility. You want control, but you outsource your inner state to weather, people, timing, mood. This contradiction is why your days feel heavy before they even begin. The first brutal truth of Stoic command is this: nothing improves until ownership is absolute. Epictetus was merciless about it. If something disturbs you, it is not the event that owns you. It is your judgment about the event. That idea sounds simple until you realize what it removes. Excuses, victimhood, moral alibis. Most people wake up already explaining themselves. They explain why today will be hard, why they are tired, why they cannot focus, why circumstances are unfair. These explanations feel harmless, even reasonable. They are not. They are rehearsals of surrender. Psychology calls this learned helplessness. Stoicism calls it slavery of the soul. The mind is efficient. Whatever story you repeat in the morning becomes the operating system for the day. Responsibility delayed becomes resentment accumulated, and resentment always leaks into action as sabotage. Here is the uncomfortable pivot. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything. It means refusing to let anything steal your agency. Frankl observed that people collapse not from suffering, but from suffering without meaning. Meaning begins where responsibility is claimed, not later, not after conditions improve. Now, you do not control outcomes. That fantasy must die, but you fully control posture, effort, interpretation, response. When you say you had no choice, you are lying to yourself for emotional comfort. There is always a choice, even if every option costs pain. The refusal to choose is still a choice, and it is usually the most expensive one. Schopenhauer warned that a man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Stoicism responds with discipline. You train the will by acting before emotion votes. This is why mornings matter. Responsibility claimed early prevents chaos later. Responsibility delayed multiplies friction. The Stoic sentence here is simple and brutal. I am responsible for how today feels, not what happens, how it feels. Say it without romance, without optimism, without emotion, as a fact, as a command. This single line cuts through entitlement, self-pity, and unconscious expectation. It repositions you from reactor to author, from passenger to driver. Most people never say this sentence honestly, because once spoken, it demands consistency. Responsibility is heavy at first, then it becomes stabilizing, then it becomes freedom. If you avoid this sentence, the rest will not work. Every other principle depends on this spine. Your problem is not pressure, it is permeability. You let everything in. Opinions, provocations, news, other people's urgency, other people's chaos. You call this being informed or empathetic. In reality, it is a failure of psychological borders. Marcus Aurelius warned that the mind becomes stained by what it consents to dwell on. Consent is the word you ignore. You believe disturbance is automatic. It is not. It is permitted. Modern psychology confirms what Stoicism already understood. Emotional reactivity is not a personality trait. It is a training outcome. What you repeatedly allow to enter your attention becomes your default inner climate. Most men wake up with their internal gates open. Every message walks in. Every irritation sets up camp. Every worry claims territory. By mid-morning, their mental space is occupied, fragmented, noisy. They mistake this occupation for productivity. Inner peace is not passivity. It is selective access. Epictetus made a brutal distinction. Some things are up to you, others are not. Peace begins when this distinction is enforced without negotiation, not intellectually. Practically, you do not need thicker skin, you need firmer gates. Jung warned that what you do not consciously control will rule you unconsciously, and you will call it fate. Most emotional reactions are not reactions at all. They are habits that escaped inspection. Here is the fracture point. If your peace can be disturbed by anyone at any time, you do not possess it. You borrow it. And borrowed peace is always revoked. The Stoic sentence here is surgical. Nothing disturbs my peace without my permission. Say it slowly. Notice the implication. It does not deny difficulty. It denies invasion. This sentence does not make you cold. It makes you sovereign. You can acknowledge criticism without absorbing it. You can face conflict without internal collapse. You can register loss without letting it define your identity. Fromm argued that modern man confuses stimulation with meaning. Constant input creates the illusion of engagement while hollowing out inner stability. Silence feels threatening because you have not trained yourself to govern it. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. Before 7, you decide what earns access to your attention. If you do not, the loudest voice will decide for you, and loud is rarely wise. Peace is not something you find later, it is something you defend early. This discipline changes posture. You move slower, you react later, you see clearer. People feel it, situations feel it. The day bends differently around someone who does not leak energy. If this sentence feels unrealistic, good. That resistance is the addiction talking. Most of your anxiety is wasted intelligence. You spend it trying to dominate variables that were never under your authority. Outcomes, opinions, timing, other people's psychology. You call this concern. It is not. It is cognitive misallocation. The Stoics were brutal about this because reality is brutal about it. There are things that answer to you and things that never will. Confusing the two is the fastest way to exhaustion. Epictetus did not offer comfort here. He offered triage. If it is not yours to command, release it, not emotionally, strategically. Modern behavioral psychology reaches the same conclusion from a different angle. Attention is a finite resource. Whatever you obsess over trains your nervous system. Worry rehearses failure. Rumination simulates defeat before it happens. Most people wake up mentally chasing ghosts. They argue with yesterday. They fear tomorrow. They negotiate with hypotheticals. Meanwhile, the present decays unused. Control is not about power. It is about precision. You do not control results. That fantasy dies here. You control effort, focus, preparation, restraint, execution, recovery. Everything else is noise wearing the mask of importance. The tragedy is that people know this intellectually and still live as if it were false. Knowledge without enforcement is decoration. Discipline begins where selective blindness is imposed. Schopenhauer observed that suffering arises less from pain itself and more from the interpretation layered on top of it. The Stoics went further. They removed the interpretation by removing illegitimate concern. Here is the Stoic sentence that reorganizes the day. Today I focus only on what I can control. This is not optimism. It is a cut. Say it and feel what drops away. The background tension, the compulsive checking, the urge to interfere where you have no leverage. What remains is sharpness. Jung warned that the psyche collapses under contradictions it refuses to resolve. Trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting what is controllable is one of those contradictions. It produces anxiety without output. Control properly defined creates calm, not because life becomes easier, but because energy stops leaking. When you focus only on what answers to you, action replaces worry, movement replaces paralysis. Even failure becomes useful because it is tied to effort, not fantasy. Before 7, this sentence saves hours of internal friction later. It turns the day from a battlefield of reaction into a workshop of execution. If this feels restrictive, understand why. Your mind is addicted to false influence. Real control is quieter. It does not shout, it does not argue. It works. You confuse value with verdicts. Promotion means worth. Praise means worth. Winning means worth. Losing means erosion. This equation is poison and you drink it every morning without noticing the symptoms. Seneca warned that no man is free who is not master of himself. What he did not soften is this. If your worth rises and falls with outcomes, you are owned by chance. You call it ambition. It is dependence. Modern psychology names it contingent self-esteem. Existential philosophy names it bad faith. Different languages, same fracture. You wake up asking the wrong question. Not what will I do today, but what will today say about me? This is why small failures feel catastrophic. This is why criticism lingers longer than achievement. This is why rest feels undeserved. Outcomes are noisy. They are shaped by variables you do not command. When you bind identity to results, you attach your nervous system to randomness. Anxiety is the tax. The Stoics refused this bargain, not because they were indifferent to excellence, but because they were ruthless about where dignity lives. Dignity lives in effort aligned with values, not in applause. Frankl saw men lose everything except the stance they took towards suffering. Those who survived did not cling to success. They clung to meaning. Meaning does not require victory, it requires coherence. Here is the sentence that breaks the performance trap. My worth is not measured by today's outcomes. Say it without self-pity. Say it without relief. Say it as a boundary. This sentence does not excuse mediocrity. It removes desperation. When worth is stable, effort becomes cleaner. You can push harder without fear of collapse. You can fail without identity damage. You can succeed without addiction. Nietzsche warned that those who seek validation become resentful when they do not receive it. Resentment poisons action. It turns ambition inward. Discipline rots when approval is the fuel. Separate effort from ego. Judge actions, not existence. When you do this before 7, the day changes texture. Work becomes craft. Conflict becomes information. Feedback becomes data. You stop auditioning for worth and start executing with clarity. This is not softness, it is psychological armor. People who anchor worth internally are dangerous in the best way. They cannot be easily manipulated. They do not bargain principles for praise. They do not panic under scrutiny. If this sentence feels threatening, understand why. Your identity has been living on unstable ground. Stability begins when worth stops being negotiable. You are not confused, you are delaying. Most men do not fail because they lack insight. They fail because they negotiate with action. They collect ideas, save videos, plan frameworks, refine intentions. This looks intelligent. It is avoidance wearing discipline's costume. Marcus Aurelius had no patience for this. He wrote that, at dawn, you must remind yourself, you are rising to do the work of a human being, not to think about it, not to prepare endlessly, to do it. Psychology calls this the intention-action gap. Philosophy calls it weakness of will. Every tradition agrees on the outcome. Nothing changes. Intentions feel productive because they stimulate identity without demanding sacrifice. You feel aligned without being tested. This is why planning is addictive. It offers relief without risk. Action removes illusion immediately. Schopenhauer observed that a man's character is revealed not by what he desires, but by what he repeatedly does under resistance. Action is the only honest metric. Everything else is narrative. You wake up every morning with good intentions. By night, they are excuses. Not because the day was unfair, but because comfort was cheaper than integrity. Here is the Stoic sentence that collapses self-deception. I will act, not just intend. This sentence does not inspire. It corners. It removes the emotional negotiation that precedes procrastination. It bypasses motivation entirely. Motivation is volatile. Discipline is structural. Modern behavioral science confirms this. Action precedes emotion far more often than emotion precedes action. You do not wait to feel ready. You act, and readiness follows as a biological response. Nietzsche despised passive idealists. He saw them as exhausted by their own thoughts. Thought without execution decays into resentment. Resentment seeks excuses. Excuses seek comfort. This is the loop you must break before 7. When you commit to action early, the day stops being theoretical. Friction becomes feedback. Resistance becomes calibration. You stop fantasizing about the person you could be and start building the person you are becoming. Fromm warned that modern man flees from responsibility by hiding in abstraction, plans, systems, intentions. Action removes the hiding places. This sentence demands specificity. Not someday, not later, not when conditions improve. Now. It does not require perfection. It requires movement. Crude execution beats elegant paralysis every time. When this sentence is lived, confidence changes. It is no longer performative, it is earned, quiet, durable. If you feel exposed by this, understand the signal. Exposure means illusion is dying. Action is the only antidote to self-betrayal. You do not fear pain. You fear that pain might be meaningless. This is why inconvenience feels personal, why setbacks feel unfair, why resistance triggers bitterness instead of adaptation. You expect life to cooperate, it never agreed to. The Stoics did not romanticize suffering, they reclassified it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way, not as poetry, as logistics. Obstruction is not an interruption of progress, it is the material of it. Modern psychology confirms what existential philosophy already understood. Stress is not what damages you. Uninterpreted stress does. When pain is framed as punishment, it corrodes. When framed as training, it strengthens. Frankl observed that those who endured extreme suffering without collapsing were not optimistic. They were oriented. They understood why they were enduring. Meaning did not remove pain. It metabolized it. Most men wake up trying to avoid discomfort. This is the strategic error. Avoided pain compounds. Chosen pain refines. Nietzsche was ruthless here. He argued that weakness comes not from suffering, but from the refusal to suffer intentionally. What you do not choose will be imposed. What you do not train will betray you under pressure. Here is the Stoic sentence that reprograms adversity. Every challenge is a chance to grow stronger. This sentence does not deny fatigue. It denies victimhood. Say it and notice the shift. The mind stops asking why me and starts asking how. This question alone changes posture. You become investigative instead of defensive. Jung warned that whatever you resist persists. Resistance turns pain into identity. Training turns pain into information. Before 7, this sentence recalibrates expectation. You stop demanding comfort. You start demanding competence. Challenges lose their moral charge. They become neutral events carrying instruction. Conflict sharpens boundaries. Failure exposes structure. Delay trains patience. Loss clarifies attachment. This does not make life gentle. It makes you durable. Men who interpret hardship as injustice grow brittle. Men who interpret it as conditioning grow dangerous in the best sense. They do not panic under load. They do not collapse under criticism. They do not negotiate with reality. If this sentence feels cold, understand why. You have been interpreting pain as an enemy. Pain is feedback, not injustice. Before 7, decide whether you will be trained or broken. Most lives fail quietly at night, not in collapse but in neglect. The day ends, the body rests, the mind numbs itself, and nothing is extracted. No meaning, no correction, no consolidation. Experience passes through you without becoming you. This is the final illusion, that growth is accidental. Seneca ended his days with interrogation, not comfort. He reviewed actions, not excuses. What weakened me? What strengthened me? What must be corrected tomorrow? This was not guilt. It was calibration. Modern psychology calls this metacognition. Existential philosophy calls it responsibility to becoming. Different terms, same demand. If you do not review the day teaches you nothing, and an unexamined day repeats itself. Most people hope tomorrow will be better without adjusting the internal variables that produced today. Hope without analysis is negligence disguised as optimism. Here is the final Stoic sentence. I will end today better than I started. This sentence eliminates drama. It replaces fantasy with compound logic. You do not need breakthroughs. You need accumulation. A day improved by 1 degree compounds into transformation. A day wasted compounds into regret. The math is indifferent to your intentions. Schopenhauer warned that life swings between pain and boredom. Discipline interrupts that oscillation. Reflection converts experience into structure. Structure converts chaos into direction. Jung argued that the unconscious punishes what the conscious refuses to integrate. If you do not consciously extract lessons, they return as symptoms. Anxiety, repetition, stagnation. Ending the day stronger does not mean winning. It means learning. Failure becomes usable, conflict becomes clarifying, fatigue becomes data, even collapse becomes instruction if it is examined without self-pity. This is where Stoicism becomes existential. You are not here to feel good. You are here to become coherent. When you close the day deliberately, identity stabilizes. You stop drifting. You stop outsourcing growth to circumstance. You become someone who converts time into structure. This is the final control point. Morning positions the mind. Night consolidates the self. Ignore this, and you live reactively forever. Apply it, and even bad days build you. This is not motivation, it is authorship. The 13 sentences you have encountered are not inspiration, they are constraints. They restrict chaos, so meaning can emerge. They do not promise ease, they promise alignment. If you wake before 7 without them, the world writes your script. If you wake with them, you write it yourself. The question is not whether life will pressure you. It will. The question is whether pressure will shape you or scatter you. That decision is made early and reinforced at night. Life does not break you. It reveals what you trained. Train early. The Stoic iron mind speaks with clarity, not cruelty. It cuts illusions, not people.